Hello viewers, 4DIYers here with another tutorial video for everyone. In this particular video here, I'll be doing a demonstration on how to remove oxidation from paint. As you can see on this Ranger, the black paint is somewhat oxidized, and it's certainly not the worst example I've had to deal with. When the paint isn't well cared for, in other words, having a paint protectant applied at a regular maintenance schedule, the paint can become somewhat oxidized, and this can happen on both single and two-stage paints. I'll explain this more in a moment. First, start by washing the vehicle. All the contaminants need to be removed so it doesn't become damaged during the polishing process. A single stage paint is basically a color and finish all in one layer. It dries to a gloss finish and does not require a clear coat to achieve that gloss or provide a protective layer. Two-stage paint, on the other hand, requires a base color applied. In order to protect that base coat, a clear coat is needed, and this also provides that final shine. A single stage paint will leave the paint's color on your polishing pads. So in this case, considering the truck is black, when polishing there will be black material left on the pad, which is normal. Polishing does remove a small amount of paint material. I already know this is a two-stage paint. While the polishing process still removes material, in this case it will be a clear coat, so you won't see that paint color on the pad. When washing, I would recommend using a microfiber wash mitt as opposed to a brush, as this is somewhat more of a paint-friendly option and will reduce the chance of scratching that paint. What is paint oxidation? Paint oxidation is the paint breaking down due to a chemical reaction between the oxygen in the air and heat. Mild oxidation can typically be polished out, but in extreme situations the paint will be too far deteriorated, and in that case the vehicle will need to be repainted. Paint oxidation makes the paint somewhat cloudy, hazy, and can leave it with a matte finish. Once done washing the vehicle, ensure it is thoroughly rinsed. Make sure around the bottom of the rockers and inside the edge of the fenders are also clean, as these spots can be sometimes missed. When polishing, the pad can pick up the dirt from these areas and eventually damage the paint. A regular hose nozzle can be used, however a pressure washer tends to be a bit more efficient. No need to dry the vehicle off just yet. Rinse out the wash bucket and fill it with new water, and then add car wash soap. Then clay bar the paint. A clay bar is needed as it will improve the polishing process by removing any paint contaminants. I do have an in-depth video on clay barring your vehicle, so be sure to check it out for more information. As an overview, always ensure the clay bar and the surface is well lubricated with the soap and water mixture from the bucket. Work the bar across the paint. Light to medium pressure is needed. Rinse the area as needed, and do not work directly in the sun. Having the paint cooler is best, as a clay bar will be more effective. Rinse the vehicle again thoroughly, and then finish drying the surface, removing any water. Compressed air can be used around the body seams or trim pieces to help remove any sitting water which may run out when polishing the paint. This can be done by hand, but you'll definitely have your work cut out for you. For this, I'm using a 2-speed rotary buffer. While parts are quite limited for this model of buffer, I glued on a hook loop pad to an extra backer pad. This was a hook loop pad repair kit, which is also used on orbital sanders and was purchased from a local hardware store. As for a pad, depending on the company, these tend to have a color coding system which will determine what it's used for. Some pads are finishers, then polishers, and finally compounds. For this, I'm using a light polishing pad, and the pad is 6 inches in diameter. For polishing compound, I am using Meguiars Ultimate Compound, which is great for beginners and can still achieve excellent results. Dots, dabs, or lines can be applied to the pad. Considering it is new, the pad tends to soak up the polish a little quicker. So more polish tends to be needed at the start and then small applications after. In order to reduce the sling, which is spray from when the polisher is turned on, polishing compound can be spread throughout the paint either by dabbing or smearing. Then work the product into the paint. This is a cooler day, so the polish won't dry as quickly and the workability is still quite easy. It's best to work in small areas, don't apply heavy pressure, and work across the panel. Don't overwork the area or leave the polisher turning in one spot, as you can damage the paint's finish. Always be careful around body lines too. As mentioned earlier, this is a 2-speed polisher. I am using it on the lowest setting. The polisher speed settings are 1400 and 1650 RPM, so the slower speed I am using is the 1400 RPM. While I am using a rotary polisher, dual action polishers can also be used. A rotary polisher will produce more heat and friction, so removing the oxidation will be quicker. However, it's much easier to damage the paint. For someone new to polishing paint, a dual action polisher would be a safer choice, but it will take longer. As a quick look, cleaning off the remaining polish with a microfiber cloth, you can see the clarity in the paint has improved. Now another angle going over the fender. This time around I have applied tape to show the transition difference. Apply more polish as needed and work it evenly onto the surface. This process is only intended to remove oxidation on the paint, and it may remove some light blemishes such as scratches or scuffs. If the oxidation is more drastic, you may need a heavier cut polish, and a polishing pad will need to reflect that. You can go over decals and pin striping, however you will need to be careful over those areas. Once the tape has been removed, the shine of the paint has been restored. When working across the hood or any side panels, in order to keep the cord from rubbing on the paint, throw it over your shoulder. You can experiment which shoulder works best, as it can fall down. With the cord being dragged in the ground, it does tend to pick up contaminants, which can scratch the paint. Around the bug deflector can be removed, or you can stick clean cloths behind it in order to pull it away from the surface. At the edges of panels, such as the hood, you can pop it up or open it completely so the fender's edge isn't overly worked, which can result in burning through the clear coat or paint layer. The thicker pads are great for coming up to irregular body lines too. As for the polishing pattern, I try to work in multiple directions, ensuring all the areas are covered and no spots are missed. This really depends on the vehicle, but try to work in half panels, or maybe a little less depending on the size of the vehicle and the weather conditions. At the moment, the temperature is around 10 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so the polish doesn't tend to dry as quickly, meaning the work time is a little longer. Being that it's cooler, this helps keep the heat down on the surface too. You'll find the pad may get dirty, considering this truck was thoroughly cleaned. This usually happens from rubber trim edges. If you do go over a trim piece, this can make the pad dirty, especially from older trim which has the rubber deteriorating. For the most part, polish can be cleaned off the trim, usually using a wet cloth. Try not to make this a habit, as you can damage the trim, so keep that in mind. Trim pieces can also be taped off if you wish as added protection. For emblems, this can be done by hand, using a Q-tip, or completely remove the emblem and then reinstall it when finished. Over time, the polish may dry on the pad, or it may not effectively work the product across the surface. The pad will need to be cleaned, and a soft brush can be used for this by running it across the pad while the polisher is rotating. Once done with the polishing stage, removing the oxidation, this wasn't intended as a full paint correction. At night, looking at the paint with a flashlight, this helps highlight those imperfections. So you can see some surface blemishes, such as scratches and scuffs, which would be deeper than the oxidation. This video isn't intended to remove those, that'll be saved for a future video. Surface blemishes do need a higher cut compound, more aggressive than the polish. The paint now no longer has any protection from dirt, UV light, or anything which may damage the paint, so we'll need a wax or a sealer instead. Which type you use is really your personal preference. For this truck, I'm using some Carnauba wax I had laying around. Waxes don't tend to last as long, however they do provide an excellent shine and depth. A sealer, on the other hand, is a synthetic compound that can seem like wax, will last longer, is more durable, but doesn't always provide that final finish like wax. This will vary between products, and there is certainly a cost associated with this. It's applied using a microfiber applicator, allowed to haze on the surface after a few minutes, and then remove and polish with a clean microfiber cloth. 2 coats can be applied. This doesn't increase the wax layer, but will provide assurance that the whole vehicle is covered sufficiently. And as you can see, this Ranger has cleaned up quite well, and the original paint is still in good condition. New videos are released every week on my channel. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It's a huge help to me, and leave a comment below if you found this tutorial helpful. Don't forget to follow my social media pages such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to keep up to date with my latest projects. And if you're not a subscriber, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching.